Klay Thompson, is he really out of Golden State? Rumor has it that he's looking for a 3-year deal in which most teams aren't willing to give him due to his previous injury history and last year's performance. Here are some teams that are interested in him: Orlando, Philly, and the Lakers. I mean, who aren't the Lakers interested in? But starting right off with Orlando, what's the likelihood of Klay actually going there?
Oh, it's a 9 out of 10. I think this is
Really?
so likely. I have been a big fan of this for a few months now. They have cap space, but they don't have to use all of their cap space on him. They can give him a good 2, maybe 3-year deal. I think that's where most of the negotiations are going to be, is that 3rd year that Clay's camp wants to get from Orlando, when they probably want to do a 2-year. But outside of that, they can pay him, and they can overpay him for 2 years and give him more money than anyone else. And if he's not going to get that 3rd year, like, I really see Orlando as the destination. As we'll talk more, like, I just have more reasons why I think Orlando should want Klay Thompson.
Wow, I have that at like a 6 out of 10.
Oh, a 6.
Yeah, I mean, again, the discussion with Orlando is they're not willing to go over 2 years with any of these older veterans. And if Klay Thompson's looking for a 3-year deal, he'll probably find it somewhere else if he's willing to go play on a bum squad.
Detroit.
If he wants to go play in Detroit just for the money, pull a Blake Griffin. You know what I mean? I see that more likely than Orlando. Granted, Orlando can pay him the most, unless, whatever. Orlando can pay him the most on that shorter term deal. But even with that, I don't think it's super likely. I'm surprised that you're super high on that.
Yeah. I am. As we go, yeah. Like, I just feel like Klay Thompson doesn't want to be in Golden State anymore. I think his feelings are a little bit hurt between him and the organization. I think there's some type of disconnect. So I think he wants out, and he's going to want to go somewhere with cap space. And he's going to want to go, I think he wants to go somewhere where he can still win and be an important player. I think he's okay with not being your first or second guy, but I think he wants to win and be an important player. And if you just look at the teams that actually do have cap space that he could go to, that is a new team, like Orlando just fits that bill. There's no one else really like that. Like, I mean, he could go to the Spurs and play with Wemby, but, I think they're further away right now than Orlando is for how great. I know Wemby's great, but they just don't have the roster depth that Orlando has. So that's kind of my thinking behind why I think it's more likely he ends up there than somewhere else.
It's a fair point. What do you think the fit and title contention would be for Orlando if they landed Klay?
Yeah, so I give the fit a 10 because we saw what that team needed in the playoffs. They need shooting. He's not going to come and take the ball away from any of their young players. He comes in, he starts at the shooting guard spot. He's probably their number 3 go-to scorer, which is good for him at this point in his career. He just comes and he gets buckets. He can be a solid defender, but they have other good defenders on that team to where he doesn't have to be the same lockdown type of guy he was before. And I give the title contention a 7, the same as I did with Paul George, because I think they'll be a good team. I think they'll be a home court team. I think they can win a round, maybe 2 in the playoffs, but I don't think they're a finals contending team with this move. I just think it helps them take a temporary step forward as their young guys get better.
I'm in complete agreement with you. I had the fit at a 9, right? He comes in, fills a role, shoots the ball, and he doesn't take the ball away from your younger players developing. That's exactly like you said. I have the title contention at like a 6.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Paul George. I mean, I don't really think they're going to win more than a playoff round. Maybe the best case scenario, like you said, is an Eastern Conference Finals run. But even then, I don't know.
That's going to happen. They're just really young. It's going to take a few years for this team, right? And they can take a step forward next year. They probably will, but not vaulting themselves past the Celtics or the Knicks quite yet.
So we're both in agreement there. Outside of the likelihood, I still don't. I can't picture him in a different jersey. Maybe that's why. Now we're going to move on to maybe an even less likely destination, the Philadelphia 76ers. What's the likelihood?
I'm giving this a 3 for the likelihood. I know they have the cap space, but honestly, I think Philly would be more likely if they missed out on a Paul George or trading for a Brandon Ingram. I think they're more likely to go get like a KCP, go after a KCP or multiple rotation pieces instead of paying an older Klay Thompson to come onto that team. He would probably fit pretty well, but also they don't have like a full roster yet. They only have like 4 guys under contract, so it's kind of hard to say at the same time. But I just think they would rather put their salary into multiple players instead of just a Klay Thompson.
I have the likelihood as a 4 out of 10. Not very likely, like you're saying. If they don't get Paul George, I think their next look is DeMar DeRozan or Brandon Ingram. And then after that, if they can't get a KCP, like you said, or a bunch of quality role players, then they'll entertain the idea. And that's why I don't think it'll happen.
Yeah, at that point, he might have gone somewhere else. So,
but as far as the fit and title contention is concerned, how does Klay Thompson raise or lower the ceiling for Philadelphia?
I mean, in all honesty, I give the fit an 8 because, one of the best shooters of all time playing next to, Maxey and Embiid. Great fit offensively. Defensively, he's not really what he used to be. So that is still kind of a question. Doesn't get a 10. Title contention, though, I give it a 7. Like, they'll be good. If they're healthy, they'll be better than last year. But I don't think this gets them over any kind of hump. I don't think they make the finals with this move. Because if Klay Thompson is on the Sixers, he's probably their third best player. And like we just said, like we don't love that for being a contender next year for Orlando, which he might be their third best guy, So him being their third best guy in Philly, I don't think it helps them, but not that much.
The only difference, okay, is Orlando doesn't have Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
Right. Joel Embiid, when healthy and actually on the court, is a top 3 player in the NBA. Right. I agree with you. The fit's an 8. The contention's a 7. I think it raises their ceiling slightly as long as Joel Embiid can stay on the floor. Right. That's a big ask. I know it's a big ask. But at the end of the day, if Joel Embiid's not healthy, none of this matters anyway.
Nope.
So
not even Paul George. Like, there's no one who can make it matter.
Unless you fricking get Giannis on the Sixers, you know what I mean? But that's not happening. So no move they can make can substitute for Joel Embiid's health.
Mm-hmm.
So assuming that he's healthy, which is probably a bad assumption, I think this puts them probably at the 2 or 3 seed in the East. You know what I mean? I like them a little bit better than Milwaukee with Klay, and I might like them a little bit more than New York.
Interesting.
I think New York just played their ass off, and they had a crazy Jalen Brunson run. I don't think the talent that New York has would be as much as Philadelphia, in my opinion. Now, they're probably better coached, and they have a better culture over there, and that is something to be said. But I think they'd move into the second seed in the East if Joel Embiid stays healthy.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, though, I only think my biggest difference between New York and Philly is just their depth of players. Like, if Philly does get Klay Thompson, I don't think there's much else they could do with their cap flexibility, because then Tyrese Maxey comes back and now they no longer have cap space. So that's really my biggest difference between the two, is just the player depth when it comes down to it. So
fair concern. We're now going to move on to probably the least likely of them all. The Los Angeles Lakers are always in rumors for every player ever made, but you got to talk about them. How likely do you think that is to come to fruition?
1 out of 10.
Yeah, 0.
Klay Thompson would have to take the vet minimum to go play for the Lakers.
And LeBron would also have to probably take a pay cut.
I know. Like, I don't see it happening. I think he goes back to Golden State for whatever money they offer him before he goes to the Lakers. So that's kind of how I feel about that. I don't think that this would happen.
Well, speaking of Golden State, how likely do you think it is that he stays there?
Golden State, I see as his second best destination. So I gave Orlando a 9. I give the Golden State a 7 with the likelihood he gets back just behind Orlando.
Yeah, I actually think he's just going to end up staying there. Maybe he's going to feel some type of way because they're not, throwing him a bone because he's not as good as he used to. I can't see him playing anywhere else. But in the hypothetical world, he goes to LA, moves down south. What do you think the fit would be like alongside LeBron and AD?
Oh man, that fit gets a solid 8 for me. The offense is awesome with Klay Thompson. Just because of that, because I think they could find other defenders to put around that team, I'm moving it up to a 9. I think the offensive fit with LeBron and AD is perfect, right? Just the catch and shoot guy sometimes can have the ball in his hands. My biggest concern with the team would be the defensive end after that. But I think if they got a Klay Thompson on that deal that cheap, they could bring defenders in free agency, guys who don't need the ball, because if you have LeBron, AD, and Klay as your primary offensive guys, you're in a pretty good spot.
I agree. I think this not only is a fantastic fit, I have it at an 8 out of 10, but I think it raises their contention to probably a 7 or an 8. I really do think Klay is going to have kind of a resurgence, a mini renaissance, so to speak. And the best player to do that with would be LeBron James. You move LeBron back to point guard, okay? Quit dicking around with him at the power forward, okay? I'm sick of it. And just have Klay running around off a bunch of screens. You know what I mean? Do a Spain pick and roll with Klay Thompson and freaking Anthony Davis. So I think it's a great fit. I think this would put them in a slightly more serious contention view. I wouldn't put them as a favorite or anything like that, but I do think it raises their ceiling significantly.
Yeah, absolutely. I give it an 8 for contention. Does raise their ceiling. Their depth is still a concern for me and their contracts and just the toxicity that comes with the Lakers. So they get an 8 because there's a slight chance they could make the finals, but is it likely? Probably not.
Yeah, they're just the wild card in the West, let's be honest. And last but not least, I think we kind of understand what the fit's like in Golden State. It's getting worse every year.
Yeah.
I still have it at an 8 out of 10 because he's alongside his long-term running mate, Steph Curry and Draymond Green. It's the same system that won 4 championships, right? I don't think I could go much lower on the fit scale. But as far as a contention, this is the worst team on the list somehow. I'm so shocked that a Steph Curry-led team is the worst title contender that is interested in Klay Thompson.
I agree with you. Fits an 8 because he still fits into the offense. He still shoots the ball well. Sometimes he treats himself like he has the old green light he used to, which was slightly an issue last year and why I think he became their 6th man, kind of to say, and his defense has been declining, but still a good fit, 8. The system was kind of built partially around him, right? Him and Steph and Draymond. So it's an 8. But yeah, their contention's a 5 because they're still probably at best like a 7 seed or an 8 seed, especially if you're locked into old Draymond, old Thompson, old Steph, like all these big contract numbers. Like I just don't think that core can be your best 3 players and win anymore. Steph is still can be your 1A guy, but the other 2-3 guys, I don't know if Klay and Draymond are the 2 to do that anymore.
I agree, man. They don't have enough size or spacing, which is insane to say because they have the 2 best shooters of all time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they don't have enough spacing. Kevon Looney's 6'9" center. And then they have a bunch of young players who played really well last year, to be honest.
Better than the old guys.
But they're not ready. So they're still stuck in this timeline of, okay, do we rebuild? Do we try to win another ring with Steph?
It's my concern with them. So the year they won the ring, I didn't think they would win because they were balancing the youth and the veterans together. And they won. They proved me wrong. But I think it's just mostly because of the greatness of Steph, how good Wiggins was that year. Klay came back and was really good. But ever since then, they showed that the veteran and youth movement at the same time, having these two opposite sides, is slowly bringing the team down year by year because you can't really go all into both at the same time.
No, and nor do they have the personnel, right? They don't
Mm-hmm.
have a super awesome young star. Like when San Antonio won those rings, that's probably the best example of this working out. And they still focused more so on the win now,
Mm-hmm.
was in 2013, 2014, Kawhi Leonard was on the San Antonio Spurs. They won a ring in 2014, and they were able to expand that title window, even though they never got back there, but they were constantly in Western Conference Finals, constantly a 1 or 2 seed in the West, even during the Golden State dominance, because Kawhi Leonard was that guy as a young star, right? I don't see any of their young players being that caliber of a player. And that's why it's not going to work for Golden State to try to balance both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. It's coming to that end. I know what point Steph's at. But it's coming to that point where they're gonna have to decide. And if you looked at what they did when Steph and Draymond got hurt, they did a mini rebuild that year, right? They kind of tanked it out. They got some assets. They were able to make some trades around the edges, swap out D'Lo for Andrew Wiggins, which at the time was really good, and it did help them win a ring. They might have to do something like that, do some sort of mini rebuild to give Steph a chance to win again. Otherwise, they're going to kind of fall into like a Chicago Bulls, LA Lakers type of thing where every year you're just repeating mediocre.
Yeah, that's the real question. And honestly, is Klay a part of either? That's the real question you got to ask. Is Klay Thompson really a part of, okay, let's go all in on the Steph Curry era. We got 2-3 more years of him being a top 5 player. Let's go for it. Is Klay going to get moved in that scenario for a better player? Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
Yeah.
And then if they're going all in on the youth movement, say, you know what, Steph, we had a great run. Where do you want to go? You know what I mean?
For real.
Which would never happen. He'll end his career at Golden State. But I'm just saying, if it were to come down to we're going to focus on developing the young players.
Hey, Steph, you want a year off?
You know what I mean?
Get that ankle injury.
I don't think Klay's a part of that either.
No.
So I've kind of talked myself out of thinking that Klay's going to be in Golden State. I just think it's going to be more likely that Golden State gets something out of him than him just walking away.
Yeah. And that's fair. That would be a tough goodbye for both sides, I think, after everything that happened there, everything that was accomplished there, right? Like, you would really hope there wouldn't be bad blood in that scenario just because they really got so much done, like, together in terms of winning and building and helping Golden State become the franchise it is today.
Yeah, it would be kind of an eerie, sad ending for Golden State to just kind of be like, all right, we're done.
Yeah.
Can't keep the group together forever.